Hello, my super second graders. This is Mrs. Rowley with this week's topic of discussion. It's a very exciting week this week because Mrs. Kerr's class joins us for topic of discussion. Her class hasn't done this yet, so it's always exciting to have a couple more kids learning from my videos. All right, so I haven't seen you since February vacation. Over vacation, I had the opportunity to go to Rhode Island to visit my brother. And while we were there, we went to this huge mall. In this mall, they had some displays of, in this case, what you're looking at is the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Now, the Capitol building is obviously very large, and this is a scaled drawing, which means it's much smaller. And it's built entirely with Legos. Can you believe it? In one of the pictures, you see my two stepdaughters. They're standing in the picture to give you scale or reference to show you how large that building actually was. And they wanted you to guess how many Legos they used. We all guessed different things. I think they used 1,000,000 Legos. There were so many. It was just impossibly large. All right, let's get to where we left off the last time we had topic of discussion. So your answer tickets from the last time that have already been corrected should be in front of you so you can follow your work to see how it compares to what I'm going to show you on the screen. Mrs. Kerr's class hopefully will just hang tight because she doesn't have these yet. All right, here we go. All right. The last time we had topic of discussion, your vocabulary definition was how tall something is. If you wrote down height for how tall something is, you are absolutely right. Now I know a few of you had written down length, and that's okay. Length is how long something is. Height is how tall something is. So hopefully now you will remember the difference. Height is tall. Sometimes when you haven't seen relatives for a long time, they'll say, "Oh, what is your height? How tall you've gotten." And it's true, you grow over time. So height is how tall something is. The question the last time we were together, I gave you a rectangular prism and I asked you to tell me how many faces there were, how many edges there were, and how many vertices there were. Now, if you haven't spent a lot of time with shapes, this is a really tough question, and I hope that for the people who struggled with it a little bit, they were able to ask a neighbor and generate some ideas. And those of you who knew, I hope you were able to communicate your ideas. So let's start with faces. Faces are the flat part of the prism. They're also shapes that you're used to dealing with. So the faces for this rectangular prism are made up of rectangles and squares. I think the easiest way to count faces is to pretend to open this prism up and lay it out flat. So if we were to do that, it might look something like this. Here's my rectangular prism, and I'm going to start to open it up and lay it out flat. And so I'm pushing down the sides so it will be flat on the table when I'm done. And when I'm done, it looks kind of like this. I flattened it all out. It's no longer three-dimensional. And I can see the shapes that make up my rectangular prism. And I'm going to count those shapes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I know that I have 6 faces on my rectangular prism. Fantastic job if you got that one right. That's really hard because faces are flat and you need to count all of the faces, which can be hard to see sometimes. That's why I lay my prism out flat so I can see all of the faces. All right, edges are a little bit easier. Edges are the straight lines that make up your prism. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 edges on the prism. And the last thing we have to do is count vertices. Vertices are where your edges meet. They create little corners. So let's count those. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So I have 8 vertices. Strategy of the week, I guess, this week, I'm going to give a little shout out to Zakai. He did such a fantastic job describing how he knew what he knew. I'd like to read his answer. He said, first, I counted all the faces, and the faces are the flat sides. Nice job. Way to describe. I know exactly what you're talking about, Zakai. There are 6 faces. 4 plus 2 equals 6. So he counted the rectangles first, and there are 4 of them, and then he added the squares on the top and the bottom, which are 2. So 4 plus 2 is 6. Then he says, and the edges are the straight lines. Absolutely. And there are 12 because 4 plus 4 plus 4 equals 12. So we counted the 4 edges at the top, the 4 edges on the side, and then the 4 edges on the bottom. And he added them together, and they were 12. And then he says, and the vertices are the edges that corner to the line. And there are 8 vertices. Nice job describing, Zakai. Now, there were a lot of people that gave me some good stuff. Quentin actually marked what he saw as sides. So hopefully you can see that. That's what Quentin did. And that was a good way to describe what you were seeing as well. So I knew exactly what he was counting and how he was counting it. Nice job for all of those people who tried really hard and may not have gotten the answer and were able to get the right answers as well. I think it's great that you continue to work on these topics of discussion. Remember, always talk it out with a friend. People have different ideas and different strategies for finding answers. Let's go on to this week's topic of discussion. Your ticket this week should look like this. Go ahead at this time and put your name on your answer ticket. All right. The vocabulary definition for this week is to make 10 ones into a 10 or to break a 10 apart. Remember, I'm giving you the definition. I'm looking for the vocabulary word that describes this definition. So when you make 10 ones into a 10 or break a 10 apart, what is that called? It has a special name. And I know that I expect Miss Stickney's class to get it because we work on this quite often. What is it called? We do it during calendar. And you know what? I bet Mrs. Lewis's class and Mrs. Kerr's class, you guys do this as well. When you have 10 days, what do you do that's special with those 10 days when you're working in calendar? All right. When you think you know the vocabulary word, turn to a friend and see if you guys have the same word. Do you? Fantastic. Turn to your other neighbor and see if you have the same word as them. If you don't agree on the vocabulary word, it's okay. Try to explain why you think the vocabulary word is what it is. When you're confident and comfortable with your answer, write down the vocabulary word to make 10 ones into a 10 or break a 10 apart in the vocabulary section of your answer ticket. Do the best that you can. Spelling in this particular case isn't important. All right, let's look at the word problem. Topic of discussion. Letitia had a box of 100 birthday cards. So far, she has sent out 47 cards. How many cards are left in the box? How could you solve that? What strategies do you have for solving this problem? Letitia had a box of 100 birthday cards. So far, she sent out 47. How many cards are in the box? I bet your teacher, somewhere in her classroom, has manipulatives for you to use. What could you use? Almost anything. You could use a hundreds chart. You could use base 10 cubes. You could use paper and pencil. You could draw a picture. Lots of different ways to solve this problem. Once you think you have the answer, Turn to a friend and see if they have the same answer. If they do, look at the strategies. How did your friend solve the problem? Did they solve it the same way as you? Or did they solve it a different way? When you think you know the answer, write it down on your answer ticket. Now remember, the blank piece of paper that's stapled to your answer ticket is to show me how you got your answer. You can show me using a picture or a diagram or words. How do you know your answer is right? Don't forget to tell me that. All right, once you have your vocabulary word and you have your answer, and you've checked in with a friend and you've shared some strategies, and your name is on your ticket, pass your ticket into your teacher. She'll pass it in to me. I'll look at them and I'll get back to you next week. This has been Mrs. Rowley with this week's topic of discussion.